Welcome to Unforbidden Truth. I'm Andrew. This is a bonus interview with convicted serial killer William Holbert, aka Wild Bill. If you haven't had a chance to hear my interview with Wild Bill, go check it out. It's a two-part interview.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gather round my children. You, darling, what's your name? Tatiana. Beautiful girl. Why don't you take off your top to inspire me? Okay, now we'll get started here, and Uncle Bill is going to tell a story, children.
What is the worst thing you have seen when it comes to human trafficking?
Well, before I tell you about the worst thing that I've seen in human trafficking, I'd have to tell you a little bit about what I actually did, so you'll understand the background of it. I was a boat captain. I'm U.S. Coast Guard licensed up to 5,000 tons, and I picked up a job working with a guy that I actually ended up killing in hit contracts. But before all that happened, I worked as a ship captain for him, subcontracted as a ship captain. And what I did is I took about between 60 and 80 passengers at a time. Were people from Asia, China specifically. And they had paid, they were not slaves or being trafficked to be slaves. They were people who had actually paid money to go to the United States, and a great deal of money. And they come through the canal. Then they come up and they stopped in Boca del Toro in Panama there for one night, and then I picked them back up the next day and took them to halfway to Jamaica. The Jamaicans come down from Jamaica, and on the high seas, we actually make a transfer of people. Now, this boat, when I say like a ship, it's a very rudimentary thing. Really, it's not. It's just a big open ponga with a flat bottom. It's got two 200 Yamahas, and it goes real slow. It's like 10 knots. And you go. It takes all day and all night to get halfway to Jamaica, and they come down for like 36 hours, and then they come down from Jamaica and meet us halfway. We tie up two boats up together in the water. People jump from one boat to the other boat. The Jamaicans count the people. I give the paperwork to the Jamaicans. The Jamaicans give me a receipt, and I come back. I give the receipt to my boss, and he pays me. Now, I did this run 3 times a week, and I made about $2,000 every time I did the run. So I was making about $6,000 in cash a week, which was pretty good money back in those days. We're talking 15 years ago now. Not maybe 15, but 12 or 13 years ago. Yeah, about 15 years ago, actually. So that was my job. Now, want to say, even though these people were people who had paid actual money to come to Panama, once they were in transit, they were basically slaves. I mean, until they get to America, they're basically cargo and nothing else. And one of the ugly things about life, it being when you're a slave or a piece of cargo, is that all of the pretty girls on the ship are sexually abused, raped, almost at every stop. And this stop at Mike Brown's house was no different. Especially, he had a son that was 17 years old that used to like to rape the girls. And particular day, I did a head count on a boat before we started off, and we were missing one. And I knew what it was, and it was a female. So I went up to the house, and sure enough, the kid had the girl there doing his thing. And Mike brings the girl out, and she's crying, and I'm like, shit. And this is it makes my job very stressful, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm on a boat, I have one security and myself, and we're both armed. But we're armed with 38 revolvers, and there's 80 people on this boat and 12 shells between the two of me and this man, me and the security. So if the people on the boat really want a revolver, there's nothing I can do about it. I really don't have any way to stop them. So I was angry. I'm like, and it was a sad thing that she's being raped. But I'm thinking from my own personal standpoint, I was very angry because it makes the passengers unruly when things like that happen, and they look to me like it's my fault, even though I had nothing to do with it. So I was complaining about that, and so I tried to put her on the boat. She's like, don't want me to touch her, and I feel sorry for her, and so I walk her down. I try to I can't speak a word of Chinese, but I'm like trying to show her that, look, I'm a nice guy, I'm not going to do nothing bad to you. And so I get her on the boat, and I put her with her people, and they all looking at me like they hate me, and I'm like, God almighty, it's a terrible situation. So we leave. And the sea is just ugly that day. I mean, there were 15-foot swells, and it's just in chop. I mean, like 15-foot swells and 5-foot, 6-foot chop. It was just an ugly day on the ocean. And when we got halfway, we got to our marker, our GPS marker. Then the Jamaicans were already there and circling, and the weather was so rough that we couldn't tie the two boats together for fear that they would bash each other to bits. And so what we had to do in that situation is I tried to maintain my boat as close to theirs as possible, very close. I mean, within a few feet, and the people just jumped across. Now, about half the people across, when the same girl that got raped, tried to cross the boat, and she fell between the two boats, and the boat smashed into her leg. And when they smashed into her leg, broke her leg so bad that the actual femur, the big bone of her leg, was sticking out of the skin. And I was like, oh my God, the Jamaicans grabbed her and hauled her up into the boat. But I mean, that's a death sentence, because we're on the open ocean. We're doing it in the middle of an illegal activity, and you got a femur sticking out of your meat. I mean, there's no way. So I didn't know what to do, and they didn't seem very concerned about it, and I was like kind of sick about it. And so I thought about telling her to put her in the boat, but even if I had put her in the boat, she'd have died before I could get her back anyway. And so what happened was I was leaving, and I heard the gunshot, and I saw them throw her overboard. So they killed her and threw her overboard. And this is something that it haunts my dreams. I don't know why it bothers me so bad, because in a way, it wasn't my doing in any way, but it bothers me. It bothers me that this is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my whole life. It bothers me because the poor girl was raped, and then she got injured and killed because she was injured. And so that's the worst thing I ever saw in human trafficking, and that is a very ugly business. My part of it, I never raped anybody. I never abused the passengers. I didn't treat them well, but I tried to treat them as well as I could, so that not necessarily because I'm a nice guy, but it just makes just good business. If they're content, they go easier. And so that's a very ugly business, and that's what happened on that day.
How do you reconcile being very worldly and a Christian minister?
Well, I think that we have to look at what Jesus Christ said and did. We have a real problem in the world today, and the problem is that the Christian, so-called the Christian right, the Christian right-wing Christians, don't follow what their namesake said. Jesus Christ loved everybody. Jesus Christ didn't discriminate based on nationality, based on color, based on sexual orientation. And the Christians of today simply don't follow that rule. The Christians of today should identify more with the Pharisees of Jesus Christ's time than with Jesus Christ himself. The Pharisees were a ruling body of religious leaders who actually had Jesus executed because they didn't like what he said. And they were very right-wing. Literally, they were the right-wing guys of their day. And so the Christians, and I won't name religions, but you all know what I'm talking about. The Christians of the Christian so-called right today hate more people than they love. And Jesus Christ loved everybody. You asked me about being worldly. Jesus Christ came and partied while he was on earth. The Bible says so. The bill doesn't say so. The Bible says so. Jesus Christ said, "The Son of Man comes eating and drinking, and you call him a wine-bibber and a glutton," meaning a partier. He liked Jesus partied. He hung out with prostitutes. He hung out with tax collectors who were the traitors and the bad boys of their day. Jesus Christ didn't go to the religious leaders, and the religious leaders had him executed. And so I follow what Jesus Christ said, not what religions. Jesus Christ didn't preach a religion. He did not. He never preached a religion. He preached a lifestyle, and he preached a practice of love and helping one another. That doesn't resemble really what's taught in most Christian churches today. Most Christian churches teach a very exclusive version of Christianity, when our Master, Lord Jesus, was the most inclusive person in the history of the world. He loved everybody, and he judged not lest ye be judged yourself. And so that's what I follow, and I do enjoy myself, and I like pretty women, and I like to party, and I like to love everybody, and I like to give a message of hope. I also follow the teachings of Wayne Dyer and men like Les Brown, who are motivational speakers. Wayne Dyer was a spiritual guru, so to speak, like an American version of a spiritual guru, and taught kind of the same thing, like the law of attraction. I believe very much in the law of attraction. What you spend your time concentrating on is what will happen to you. If you spend your time living in fear, bad shit's going to happen to you. And if you spend your time living in love, good things are going to happen to you. So to reconcile being a Christian minister and being worldly at the same time, I would say that simply I'm following Jesus Christ's example and what He commanded us to do, and that's to love everybody and have a darn good time. That's what He wants from me.
What's the worst thing you've ever seen since being incarcerated?
Now, this is a sad question, and it's not the murders. I've been through a lot of, I've seen a lot of murders here in prison, a lot of death, and we'll get to that later. But the very worst thing that I ever saw in prison was what happened to a young man named Stephen. I was in Chiriquí in the old David jail, which doesn't exist anymore. It burned down. But it was a very informal prison, and they brought this kid who was a Costa Rican. He was maybe 26, 27 years old, I would say. They brought him in, and his name was Stephen. It wasn't Esteban, it was Stephen. And he was a big, oafish kind of fellow, and he was slow. He wasn't like mentally retarded, as far as like, he didn't have Down syndrome, he didn't have dementia. Simply, I think that he just had a really low IQ. Like, let's estimate, and I'm not anybody to be able to estimate, but in my own estimation, I would say he had an IQ of way below 80, like maybe 65. He could dress himself, could clean himself, but that's about it. And he could speak really well. That's about it. But they brought him in for murder because like the person who took care of him had went to sleep and he had bashed their head in with a rock. And so, but they brought him in, and at first they put him with the prisoners, and they expected the prisoners to, and that's always the Panamanian penitentiary system's way. The Panamanian prisoners don't have the obligation to take care of another prisoner. That's not fair. We're all here. And so Stephen would be violent, have violent outbreaks, and then they would throw him out of one cell, and so they'd stick him in another cell with other people, and the same thing would happen, and so on and so forth, until nobody wanted him. They wanted him in their cell because he was so difficult to care for. And it's not their position to be caring for him. They're prisoners. They don't work for the state. And so what did they do with poor Stephen? Instead of sending him to the mental hospital or something, they chained him up to a post in the rancho. And the rancho is like an open air building where they hold church services and things like that, and then the schools there. So they chained poor Stephen up to a post. And when Stephen came in to the prison, he was cognizant, let's say. Not functional, but near functional. But after the abuse that he suffered at the hands of the authorities, and I don't mean at the prisoners, I mean at the hands of the authorities, and I'll get to that, he began to devolve. They would chain him up to a post, and like the poor bastard would have to shit or something, and he would just shit right there because he was chained to a post, and then they would come and beat him because he had shit there and not waited. But he doesn't even understand the concept of waiting till later, and what man should have to wait till later if he has to take a shit? He should be able to take a shit, I mean, so it was bad. And like there was one particular fat bastard guard that I hated, and he would go, and you could hear him at night beating Stephen. He would go there and call him names and tell him he was filthy and a pig, and he would beat him. And I mean, this guy must really hate himself to treat another human being that way. And like even myself, I would buy Stephen an ice cream or something every time I was outside because I felt sorry for him. And like even one day, he threw a chair at me, I don't feel bad. Obviously, he's not well. He's mentally not well. And so he developed, this is not funny what I'm about to say, and I'm not saying it to be funny. I'm just telling what happened. He developed this thing where he would chronically masturbate in front of everyone all day. I mean, all day. Like everybody's walking around and Stephen's got his pants down with his pecker out, and this is a horrifying situation, and the Panamanians just left him chained to a post. So I called myself. I had enough of it, and I was the representative of the prisoners, the elected representative of the prisoners to the government. So I called from the office. I called the fiscal, who is the district attorney in charge of his case, and I asked him. I said, "How do you sleep? You got this kid here chained to a post, man. How do you sleep at night?" And he says, "Well, it's not my fault." He said the psychiatric board have ruled him to be competent for trial. I said, anybody that sits down with this kid for 2 minutes is going to know that he ain't right, and that he ought to be in a manicomio, which is a place for lunatics, like an asylum, not getting treatment, not chained to a post in a prison, getting beat by guards. And he's like, "Oh, I don't know." And he's like, "That's your opinion, and you're not a doctor." I'm like, "No, I ain't a doctor, man, but I'm living with the kid, and I'm telling you that they're abusing the kid here." So I called the Costa Rican consulate, explained the situation, and after about a year. It took me a year to get him out of there, but they finally took him to a manicomio, to a lunatic asylum, and that was a positive thing. I hope that they treated him better there than they treated him in the prison, because in the prison they really treated him like a dog, and it was a sick thing to see him. And the thing that was worse about it was, like I said, when he first came in, he was almost normal, but then when he went out, he was a dog. He was a raving lunatic, like just a ravenous beast. And like they would take his food and throw it to him, like, I mean, literally, like nobody could get near to him because he was violent. You couldn't get too near to him. But I always tried to speak to him, bring him something, bring him an ice cream or something, and he was always really, like, at least he wanted the ice cream. And so, but I mean, the thing about it is, I understand that the guards are not trained to deal with that sort of thing, but there's no reason to treat a human being that way, and that bothers me as well. It's something that bothered me. I would have liked to have killed every one of them guards myself for the way that they treated that poor kid, because I couldn't look at him, and I mean, I'm a bad guy, I'm a hitman, I'm a murderer, but I couldn't look at that kid and see anything but sympathy and for him. And so that was the worst thing I ever saw in prison.
Have you had any type of altercations with prison staff or officials since your incarceration?
I did have an altercation, a funny one that follows me to this day. This story in the prison system follows me to this day. It was 2011, and I had been in prison for about a year, 6 months in Panama City and 6 months in David, in the old jail in David. And I was in yard time. I had my patio time, and I was out in the yard, and I had run. And I was trying to get thin. I was trying to slim down, be pretty for all the pretty girls, And I was coming in, and I was all sweaty, and I was tired. And I was standing in front of my cell, and the cells were just padlocked. They had padlocks. I was standing in front of my cell, and it's a very informal jail. It's just kind of all ramshackle. And I was standing in front of my cell waiting on the guard to come and open the door. This big fat guard is taller than me, and he's like shaped like a teardrop, like skinny on top and big belly and fat and worthless. I don't have any problem with this guy. At this point, I didn't say anything to him. I didn't know him. I don't know. I don't really know what he was thinking. I still don't understand. He walks up to me and smiles, and he puts his hand into his holster and pulls his gas pepper spray that they use to calm riots and stuff. And he pulls it out, and he goes to spray me in the face with it. And I caught his hand. I'm like, what the fuck? What are you doing? I caught his hand and I pushed it to the right, and he caught my ear with it, but he didn't get me in the face with it. And in one motion, I took away the pepper spray, reached into his belt, and pulled his nightstick out and beat him over the head with it really hard. So he fell down, and then when that happened, there were 50 of us standing around, waiting to go in cells, and there were 7 guards. So 3 guards come running, and I took 2 out, plow, with the stick. One hit them both in the face with the stick, like front hand and back hand, and then the third turned, and I hit him in the back of the head with the stick as he turned and fell. And so I got 4 guards laying on the ground, and 3 guards go running away, and I'm like, oh shit, I got a real problem. I mean, I'm aware of the fact that I have just done something that's going to be difficult, but the thing that saved me was that there was a camera there, and they call the goon squad. The goon squad comes to the door, and they're like, you have 4 guards held hostage. I said, ain't nobody held hostage here. These bastards can leave whenever they want to. I ain't holding nobody hostage, and I ain't giving up the stick, and I ain't giving up the gas until y'all come and scrape these up off the floor. So the head of security was a friend of mine. The head guard was a friend of mine named Morales. And Morales came, and he's like, what is going on? And he's like, and I said, look, man, if you want to know what's going on, go to your office and download the video off of the CD or whatever, the little machine there that records it, and watch. I'll wait. And I said, if you want to come and get these boys out of here, get them out of here. I'm not going to bid it. I'm not doing anything. I'm just waiting. But I'm not giving up my gas and my stick until the pimento spray. I'm not giving nothing back to nobody until these guys are out of here and I'm safely in my cell. So he says, wait, I'll be back in 3 minutes. So he goes and he comes back and he says, well, you shouldn't have did that. And I'm like, why did the man try to spray me in the face with gas? He's like, I don't know. It don't make any sense either. So I said, we're in prison, and I know y'all can screw me, but the smartest thing would be that we all forget about this and it never happened. And that's what he said. He said, that's fine. Nothing ever happened. So they scraped the three up off the floor and carried them out and then put me in the cell. And I was like the hero of heroes in the prison. I mean, like the fucking hero of heroes in the prison for about a year because of that. And even today, that story follows me. Like I come to prison here and the cops are like, did you really beat up 4 guards? And I'm like, yeah, that did happen. But the story's kind of bigger like now now it's like anything else. The story got bigger than it really was. Like it was me against 50 guards or some shit, and I'm just shitting fireballs, and it's just they make it bigger than it was. And so that was the only real altercation I've ever had with a prison guard.
In December 2019, there was a riot at the prison you're currently housed at, which made international headlines. Tell me about that incident and what it was like from the inside.
That is for sure the weirdest, most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm in a prison where prisoners rule. Not the government doesn't rule. The government just keeps us in, basically. But the prisoners rule here, and prisoners have firearms. Prisoners have pistols, AK-47s, machetes. So at that time I was living with a group of prisoners called Baghdad, and Baghdad is a gang, the biggest gang, the most sophisticated gang in Panama. They are responsible for I don't know how much cocaine sold on the street, and they dominate everything in the Republic of Panama. And so there was a rift. Something happened, and the gang split down the middle, and they decided to fight. And when they decided to fight, one side was aware, the other side was taken by surprise. And the surprise was that they killed 15 of the heads of the other side here in the prison, shot them with AK-47s, and the firefight ensued. I'm like laying on the floor with my hands over my head, like, holy shit. Just crazy stuff. And so once they killed everybody and everything calmed down inside the prison, the police all left. The police got scared and left. And they just fortify the exterior walls until the riot is quelled by itself. Is basically what they do. And then they wait. And they came in. The police did come in, but they came in mass. They massed outside first. They were like, I don't know, maybe 1,000 police officers outside to storm the prison. So it's like a whole day. The prison's just run by itself, and you can believe the shit that happens. If you're smart like me, I just stayed in my cell. I even locked on my door and stayed in my cell. I'm like, I ain't going out. I'd only been in this prison for 2 months when that happened. I was new here still. I wasn't the pastor of the church or anything, but I didn't have any gang affiliations or anything, so there was no problem. And everybody liked me okay, everybody on all sides. And so there was no reason to give me a hard time or shoot me or anything. So, and they didn't. Nobody even threatened me or anything. I just stayed in my own cell. And then they killed 15, and they piled 15 bodies up, and one guy went with a machete hacking off heads. I'm not joking. And they piled the heads up in the middle of the floor and made a fire in the middle of inside the prison, made a fire. And I'm not joking. They danced around them, shaking guns in the air and shit. It was like something out of a, I don't know, something you'd see in, I don't know where you'd see something like that, some savage place. And it was like watching like cavemen dance around the deaths of their enemies or something. And I couldn't even believe what I was seeing, and I was close enough to see it, but like with my own eyes. It wasn't here in my cell block, but it was 2 cell blocks over, but you could see it. And I watched it, and there's a lot of videos about that. You can probably maybe find one online if you look at La Jolla Massacre. You might find one online. And before I finish this question, I wanted to do something. I wanted to give a shout out to my friend who introduced me to Unforbidden Truth, and his name is J.P. Woodard. And I promised him the last time I did an interview that I'd mention him, and I forgot to do it. And I wanted to mention JP because JP got me started doing these podcast interviews. He introduced me to Andrew Dodge and Joey Hoffman, who are just the greatest guys. And I wanted to say thanks to JP and his lovely wife who live in Alabama. God bless their family, and they've been so nice to me. And so that I'd like to mention them in this question. And so that was the craziest thing I've ever seen, the most violent and crazy thing I've ever seen in prison. And that happened December of 2019. I'd been here about 2 months when that occurred. It took the police a whole day to get everything back under control. And of course, when the police come in, they strip us into our underwear and beat the shit out of all of us, the ones who didn't have anything to do with the actual riot, and sprayed us all down with gas until we're puking. And when I say gas, I'm talking about pepper spray. Sprayed us all down with pepper spray and mace until we're all puking and like they do that. They always do that sort of thing. They always punish everybody And like in this case, they're too afraid to punish the actual Baghdad guys, because the Baghdad guys will send people to the police actual homes and kill their families and shit. So they won't mess with them, but the rest of us who have nothing to do with it, they will. And so it was a difficult day for sure.
On February 2nd, 2020, the only other incarcerated serial killer besides yourself in Panama escaped from the prison you're in. Do you know the events surrounding that? And did the prisoners get any blowback from his escape?
There's a guy here named Ventura, Gilberto Ventura. He was a guy he's one of the most high profile prisoners in the, if not the most high profile prisoner, maybe even more so than I am. This is what I understand. I mean, I just like what I know in the news and so on and so forth. But he was a guy he would kidnap Chinese businessmen's children, and I say like adult children, like university age children, and hold them for ransom. And then when they paid the ransom, he'd just kill them. And so he did this, and he became he's Dominican. He's not from Panama. He's a guy from the Dominican Republic. And there was an international manhunt for him, and they found him in the Dominican Republic and shipped him back to Panama. And so there's actually a lot of similarities between the cases. My case and his is because the same thing happened to me. They captured me in Nicaragua and sent me back to Panama. But they gave him 30 years, and he escaped. And I want to be honest with you, that you got to take your hat off to the kid for the escape. I mean, I don't know how he did it. I mean, I know how he did it, but I don't know how he could get it all together. He cut 2 bars out of the cell, climbed up onto the roof, and then let himself down off the roof. And some guard had to help him. It's not possible that he could have done it without inside help. And they know that. They know that here too. Somebody let him out of the prison, because you can't climb over the fence here. The fence, there's no way. There's no way to climb over. It's got too much razor wire and sensors on it and so on and so forth. I mean, if you touch that fence, and sensors go off. So somebody either cut the sensors off, or most probably they just opened the door for him and let him out. And then they have him on camera walking out dressed in a police uniform. He was dressed in a police uniform. So they know he had inside help. So he got out, and then we all thought for sure that he was long gone. But the idiot rented a house and just tried to lay low here in Panama or something. And like 2 weeks later, the cops caught him. So, I mean, like, in a way, he was really smart. He got out of prison, but then he was a real stupid ass at the same time. I don't know what he was thinking to hide in Panama, because they literally shut this country down looking for him. They literally shut the country down. Now, what happened to us here in the prison after that? God Almighty, we got searched, and that's the thing I never understood. Prison mentality is the people who are left behind after an escape, they punish, or they punish us like, well, hell, we didn't try to escape, and I didn't even know about it. I learned about it when the guards were screaming, like, I didn't even know that he had gone. I mean, and we didn't know. We didn't have anything to do with it, but they punished us. And we lived 1 year. And because it was really embarrassing, the police were embarrassed, because this is supposed to be, see, most prisons are held by prison guards. Most prisons are guarded by prison guards, not guarded by the police. This is Supermax, guarded by the best police, no shelter, I don't know, whatever. And he made them all look real stupid. So they hated him, but they've got him now in a place called, well, they had him in the Metro, and now they moved him back here the day before yesterday. Yesterday. Yes, it was yesterday. I brought him back here yesterday, but they've got him in a place where I can't even get to him. It's like a super solitary confinement area that's really difficult. And so that's the story with Gilberto. He had a girlfriend that hung out with my soon-to-be or now ex-wife. But that's about it. That's about all I can say about that. That's about all I know about old Gilberto. But I know that he got a light sentence. He'll be out. He'll be out in no time at all. They tack on extra time for escapes, but you can just pay a fine and they take that time back off. So he would pay $1,000 fine or something for that escape, and that's it. This is his second escape. He escaped one time before as well.
I understand you're going through a divorce right now. Can you talk about that?
Well, it's been probably one of the hardest things that I've ever been through in my life, and that's funny, you know. I'm a guy that's used to, you know, you can throw hand grenades at me all day and I'm fine, but then the emotional things affect me greatly. And I married a young woman who was, you know, wasn't half my age, but she's pretty close. almost half my age. She was 23 when I married her, and I was 39, so she's almost half my age, and beautiful young woman. But I don't think that she was ready for the realities of living with somebody that's in prison. And the thing about one of the things is when I got married to her, I was living in Cherokee, in the New Cherokee jail, which was a minimum security facility. I had the jail wired, meaning anything and everything that happened there, I knew about it and had a piece of it. So I made good money. I mean, like really good money, like, I don't know, $2,500 a month. And people say, that's not very much money. It is in Panama. It's a lot of money in Panama. And that's a lot of money for a prisoner. Think about that. $2,500 a month for a prisoner, tax-free money is good money. And so I could see her almost every day as well. I could engineer a way to see her almost every day. I could have sex with her a couple times a week. And everything was really well. And then the Panamanian government saw fit to move me to this hellhole where I am. And I lost all those privileges, and it went to having sex once a month and having a visit every 15 days behind glass. And I think that she just got tired. I think that's hard and wasn't necessarily what she signed on for. And where our economic capacity was reduced. And so, you know, a few months ago, it all fell apart. And I won't tell the whole story because I don't want to speak bad about her, but I want you to know that really, honestly, it was the saddest time I've ever, and I'm still living it. I can't tell you how many tears I cried over it because I really thought that things were different, and they're not. And it's always the same shit at the end of the day. People just get tired. When you're in prison or you're in the hospital or you're in court, that's when you find out who your true friends are, not on top of it. And it's funny to think of a prisoner being on top of the world, but in the Cherokee prison, I probably lived better than most people listening to this audio. I ate better, had more sex, and was more revered than most people live in their own lives. And so that changed when they moved me here, and I've had 21 months in this terrible facility where I am here, and I think that she just didn't sign on for that. So for better or for worse, my ass. That's the way it always is. God bless her, and I hope that she's happy with the decisions that she's made, and hope that she's well. She certainly stomped on my fucking heart, and but I still think she's a good girl, and I wish her all the best.
If you could do something different in your life, what would that be?
I think that the turning point of my life was I got a divorce. Always with the damn divorces. Always with the women. But I had a real problem with my first ex-wife, and we went to court. And when I was in court, the judge, and this is a small town, people think that, you know, what's funny is people think that there's no corruption in the United States, and there is. It's just a different kind. And the small town and the judge was actually the father of a girl that I did wrong in high school. And I told Bill, I said, hey, man, you got to get a different judge. So he put in a motion to have the judge to rescind himself and put a different judge on the case, and the judge denied and refused. And even he was surprised because that's almost always answered. So this judge really wanted to break it off in my ass. And so we went to court, and the judge ordered me to pay between alimony and child support $4,000 a month. Now, this is 2005. Or 2000, no, it's 2005, it was 2004. And I didn't make that much money a month. I didn't even make $4,000 a month. Am I going to pay $4,000 a month? I don't even make $4,000 a month. I protested. And the judge told me, he said, well, that's what I ordered. So I left, and Bill, my lawyer, told me, he said, you can't pay it. If you pay it, then you're demonstrating that you can pay it. So send her $750, which is fair, and it's going to call us back in here, and it's going to fuss at you, but then they'll lower the amount you have to pay because you can say that's all I had. So I did what he said. I gave her $750 a month, and she kept the children back from me. She didn't let me see the kids. So she sued me, and then Bill sued her. Her lawyer sued me, and my lawyer sued her. So back to court we go. Go back to the court. Judge decide. Here's all the court, everything that was said, and says you're both guilty of contempt of court. You're both guilty of contempt because you both disobeyed a direct order. So he told her that she had to pay $50 fine. And so I was waiting on my $50 fine. And he come to me and he said, and you 2 weeks in prison, in jail. And up to this point in my life, I was straight, man. I never did anything wrong, nothing. And I was trying my very best. I wanted to be a politician. I wanted to run that next year as state representative, state house, excuse me, and which is like a first step into politics, you know. And I was really angry because that was going to screw that. And I asked him, I said, but 2 weeks in jail, what are you talking about in jail? You give her a $50 fine. I got angry. And so my lawyer's like, shut up. And I'm like, shut up, nothing, do something. You know, what the hell? Put me in jail. I ain't done nothing. And so Bill says, let him serve it on the weekends. Bill Gardo, my lawyer, says, let him serve it on the weekends. And the judge said, okay, fine, he can serve it on the weekends. And so, like, we're talking about 10 weeks I'd have to go, or, you know, or longer, I don't know, or 7 weeks I'd have to go every weekend to prison. And so the bailiff, the judge left the courtroom, and I'm like devastated. And the bailiff comes to me and he says, that was really wrong what happened. And the bailiff is a nice guy. I remember he's a big old dude with a big belly, and he had a mustache and a bald head. And he says to me, he says, if you come to jail, man, he says, you'll only have to sleep in a cell. The rest of the time we'll keep you out and we'll play cards and watch TV and stuff, man, because you're not like a bad guy and you don't deserve to be in it. Don't worry. And so I said, thanks. And so I went outside, and Bill said, what are you going to do? And I said, these motherfuckers want to see a criminal. I'm going to give them the best damn criminal there is. And that's how it all began. All of it began right there. And so if I had anything to go back and do over again, it would be that I went and served my 2 weeks in jail, and I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be talking to y'all, and I'd be living there, and maybe I'd be a small-time politician in North Carolina.
Do you believe you deserve a second chance?
You know, I don't believe I deserve a second chance, but nobody else does either. It's not about deserve, has nothing to do with it. I don't deserve a second chance. I did things that have condemned me, but I'm going to work for my second chance, and I'm going to have it because I'm not going to earn it. I'm going to have it. I'm going to create my second chance. I'm working really hard to better myself, and while I better myself, I'm working really hard to help other people better themselves as well. I preach the gospel. I preach the law of attraction, and I preach nothing but positivity. You know, when we're driving along the line, Wayne Dyer, this is a Wayne Dyer statement. I won't take credit for it, but Wayne said that you're driving a boat. If you're looking back at the wake of the boat, you're going to run up on the rocks, man. You can't do that. You got to look forward. There ain't a thing I can do about the things that I did except learn from them, apologize for them, and move forward. And that's what I'm doing. I want to be a better man than I was before. I know in my heart that I'm a reconditioned man. I'm a reconstructed man. I would never kill anybody ever again. I never liked it to start with. I never liked killing people to start with. I just did it because it made a lot of money. And not only do I not want to kill people, I'd like to take that message to kids today to not do what I did. And a lot of kids are doing what I did, locked in their room, listening to terrible music, feeling alone. Get your head up, get your ass out of the house, go do something, and find something that you want to do with your life. And my advice for any young kid starting out in the world, don't start out on the negative side. Start out on the positive side. Think about how you'd like your life to be in 10 years. Write that down, and then every single thing that you do, make it conform to that wish and that desire for the future. I didn't do that. I concentrated on negative things and put myself in negative situations and blamed everyone else for my own mistakes. And I learned you need to take advantage. You need to own your mistakes. You need to be responsible for your mistakes and then change yourself so you don't make them again. Do I deserve a second chance? No, but you don't either. So, well, I never killed anybody. Well, no, you didn't, but you've done other shit that's just as bad or different in different ways, and you know that you have. You've betrayed somebody. You've cheated on your wife. You've cheated on your taxes. You've done something you shouldn't do. And so I don't deserve a second chance, but you don't deserve one either. But if you'll do what I'm doing, you can have a second chance, and that is changing your life, bettering your life, owning your mistakes, and bettering yourself. So that's my advice to anyone else, and that's my answer.
That was my interview with Wild Bill. Thank you for listening.
Unforbidden.